All right, here we go. So you see it behind me. There are some changes. Things are coming down. I've been in this office for some years now, and it's time to change offices. So you're going to get to watch that change as I make videos every day. But today, let's focus on what we're doing. Can you buy a house with somebody that you're not married to? This comes up, and there, most people know that you can, right? But they don't know all of the ins and outs. Whenever I run into this, it's usually like it's myself and a parent, myself and a brother sister situation. It's rare when it's friends. It's rare when it's people that are dating. That's probably what I'm going to hammer on the most as we get through this, so you understand kind of the legal beagle aspects of what's going on. So if you're considering buying a house with uh, my fiance, my future wife or husband or whatever, right? Or I'm considering a buddy of mine or a friend of mine. We're thinking about buying a house together. This is an important video for you to watch. There's a lot that's kind of in here, and I think I'm hoping this helps somebody out. So simply put, can you buy a house with somebody other than who you're married to? Absolutely. When it comes to a mortgage, when it comes to a house, and we'll talk about different aspects of that, it doesn't matter. So let's just talk about, let's say you have the cash, you and a friend, a partner, whatever it might be. You guys see a house for $100,000, and you have $100,000. You decide to buy the house. You simply go in there and you set up the vesting through title on how you want that to be vested. And so what does that mean? So let's say one person's coming in with 50,000, the other person's coming in with 50,000, and you want to set it up with title so you can get the title of the home, so you own it, the actual ownership of the home, and you put it in there that it is vested 50%, 50-50 between the two of us. You can do that. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky when you start talking about getting a mortgage. Okay, so that's some of the stuff I'm going to talk about now. So yes, you can purchase a home with, I've seen it, I've had 8 different people come in on a mortgage loan to purchase a property. You can do that. You could have as many as you want. You could have 100 people. But it's all going to kind of shake out like this. So here's a big one. The mortgage note determines who is financially responsible to the debt. That's what's important. I have people call me and say, okay, well, I'm going to do the loan, but my fiance or my friend or whomever, they're going to be on the title, right? I deal with this mostly when people are dating. When somebody's dating and they have intentions of getting married, they're like, I'm trying to walk around this gently because I don't want people to get really pissed, but I can't think of a nice way of explaining this other than just saying what it is. Because keep in mind, this is all I do for a living. So I'm going to tell you what I see. Usually it's 2 individuals that are have intentions of getting married in the future, and they've decided that they're going to move in together. Okay, and instead of just moving in and renting something, or one person move into the other person's home, they decide they're going to buy their own house together. What I see is one person is qualified to purchase a home, and the other person, for one reason or another, is not. So when we look to do the mortgage, they go, okay, well, I'm going to buy the house, but we are going to own the house. Well, now we're talking about 2 different things. Okay, 2 completely different things. So I'm going to give you this scenario, and then I'll give you other scenarios. So, because this is probably the most difficult scenario out of all the scenarios I'll give you. When it comes to the bank, I've said this over and over and over and over and over on a lot of the videos that I post up on YouTube, right? The bank only cares about 2 things. They care about protecting the asset. That's the property. Until you pay it off, the bank wants to protect that asset so they don't lose. Okay? So protecting the asset and making a profit. So when the bank says, you know what, you want to borrow $500,000 to buy this house, we're going to give you $500,000 because you are qualified. You meet, XYZ, whether it's your income, your employment, assets, credit, debts, all that fun stuff. We're going to give it to you. But that person, whoever you're trying to just add on here, they will not have any ownership of that house. If they want ownership of that house, because when you put them on title, you're giving them vested ownership of the property. If they want ownership of the house, we want to qualify them too. And that's where it starts getting weird. I've literally had people call me up pissed about this. Well, I should be allowed to. Sure. But you got to understand, if you want to own it, one of two things needs to take place. Either you guys come up with cash and you pay for it in cash, or both of you go on the mortgage to borrow that money together in order to have total vested interest together, whether that's 50-50 or however you negotiate it out, keeping in mind that different states have different laws. Okay? Different states have different laws. So I really want you to understand, so if it's boyfriend, girlfriend, engaged couples, friends, siblings, parents and adults, child, it doesn't matter. One of the challenges that you're going to run into is who's on the mortgage and who's on title. They're two completely different things, and I need you to understand that. Mortgage is mortgage, title is title. Mortgage is who's responsible to make payments. Title is who's vested to have ownership of the property. Usually if you're using a bank and borrowing money, they don't want random people vested in the property that can muck it up for you when they have a mortgage and they've let you borrow the money to purchase that home. Now, if I were to be personal about this, okay, this is where it gets funky. The individual that usually for one reason or another is unable to get on the mortgage, they take it very personal. Well, we're together and we're going to do it together. I hear you, but what if, because I've seen it happen, and we'll talk a little bit about that. What if things don't work out? So you came in with no money, you took no risk, and then you break up and you have ownership of this house, 50% vested ownership of this house. That's a problem. So the person that actually was on the dime, took the risk, purchased the home, was qualified, they're going to have to give up equity on a home that, I don't know, gets a little funky. So just keep that in mind. That's why it's always, I really want to do this video because I'm telling you, I run into this pretty often. Okay, so who goes on the mortgage? Like I said, the person that's going to get qualified and is qualified to borrow that money goes on the mortgage. Ideally, however many parties are involved, they all go on the mortgage. Therefore, they all can have vested interest, and they're with agreements, know who's paying what and who's doing what. Now, where can that get a little funky? This is where, like, simple stuff, credit. Okay, one person has an 840 credit score. The other person has a 575. I run into this all the time. Yeah, but I have excellent credit. You do. You have amazing credit. Well, why are you using the person with 575? Because look at it like this. Who's the weakest link that has a problem with being responsible with money? The bank is looking at, okay, if I have to bet, because the bank doesn't like to lose, if I have to bet on who we're going to build this loan around, do we pick the person at the 840 knowing that this other person over here is irresponsible? The 575 has a 575 for a reason. For one reason or another, they are not good with borrowing money and paying it back on time consistently. So the bank looks at the weakest link, and they're going to build your interest rate and all the other fun stuff around that weakest link. Sometimes even the down payment will adjust based off of the weakest link. So that's important. You got to understand that if you're doing this together, whoever has the weaker credit, that's typically where it's going to be going from. So who goes on title? Title determines ownership. That's the big one. Mortgage determines who's responsible to pay the debt. Title determines who has ownership of the property. So two people can own a property together without being married all day, no problem. And there's a lot of different forms of ownership, a whole bunch of different forms of ownership. You know, you could break it down into you get a percentage, I get a percentage, all sorts of stuff. And that'll be sorted out in escrow and title. But like I mentioned earlier, there's also state laws that dictate that as well. So I think it's really important that you explore that, because let's say one person comes in with like 80% of the money down and the other person comes in with 20. I see this all the time. Okay, why am I doing this video? The reality is I see this scenario a lot. Then for some people, things go wrong. It doesn't work out for one reason or another. Then they call me back going, what can I do? I'm hoping somebody in the future will be able to watch this up front and go, ooh, I got to really make sure that we're all in. I got to really make sure that, it's of equal, in a sense, equal give and take. If one person's going really hard in the paint, that one person that's going really hard could lose if things don't work out. If things do work out, fantastic. It all works out, right? But what if it doesn't? You just got to think about it. So how much does each person own? Like I said, it just really depends on what you want to set up when it goes into title. Or it could also depend on the state laws in general, okay? So let's talk about this. This is huge. So let's say you have a 50-50, we'll use the easier term, and then we'll go to the 80-20, right? So 50-50, you're paying half, I'm paying half, and that's how we're setting up the mortgage. Here's the thing, the bank doesn't care. The bank doesn't care. The bank doesn't care if you're supposed to pay 80 and they pay 20. The bank doesn't care. All the bank cares about is that you make your payments. So what if the other person stops making payments? You're in trouble. Somebody's in trouble. The lender doesn't care. They just want to get paid every month. So if the other person stops paying, the obligation doesn't disappear, nor is it removed. You can't say, well, bank, I'm paying my 80 and they're not paying their 20. Doesn't care. You can't, my ex was supposed to make the payments. Don't care. That's how you start to get in trouble. So what happens if there's a breakup? This is where it could get a little ugly. Who stays in the house? Who moves out of the house? Who makes the mortgage payments? Does one person buy the other person out? Do you sell the property? What if one person wants to sell and the other doesn't? What happens with the equity? These are all questions that you're going to probably have to deal with. I would recommend, and I always do that, you sort of mention it up front. The hard part is a lot of people don't want to have this conversation because they never want to sit down with their whomever they're, again, it could be a partner, it could be a sibling, it could be a parent. They never want to have the tough conversation of what if and play the what if game because it can come off, especially in a relationship where it's insulting. Oh, are you saying we're not gonna work? No, I'm saying what if? Let's create an agreement. Let's come up with, some safety nets, some fail safes, if you will, if things don't work out. So nobody gets hurt, nobody gets screwed. We aren't having to deal with all the legal court battles, all the garbage stuff that really makes it suck. I think that's important. Now, what I also see, these little breakups start to happen, and then I get a phone call. Hey, Kris, can I take them off the mortgage? I'm just going to take them off. No, it depends. Okay, but look at it like this. The mortgage that's there that you both went on, if you both went on the mortgage and you both purchased the home and you both have equitable interest in the property, you can't just go, you're out. I'm taking you off. It's mine. No, they have legal ownership to that property. So it's not simply you just take them off. You call somebody and have them removed. There has to be an agreement in some way. Either you're going to have to buy them out. They're going to have to, you're going to have to get a new loan, a completely new loan, and qualify on your own. Something is going to have to take place to where one person can be removed from the debt. Otherwise, they're in it to win it with you for however long that ride's going to be. They bought a ticket, they're on the ride, they're buckled in. That's it. So you're going to have to basically redo it. Now, what if one person dies? This is a tough one. This is a tough one. So when you talk about estate planning, you have a couple or siblings or whatever, individuals that aren't married, right? So if you're married, this is a super easy one, okay? One spouse dies, the other spouse, automatically, it's just part of their estate. But let's talk about, let's say person A has a couple kids, person B is single, person A passes away. Person A is not your spouse. You're not part of their estate. However, you do have an equitable interest in the property, and the other person has an equitable interest in the property for their estate, their children. Oh boy, this could get a little hairy. So it doesn't mean that the person whoever the single person is, right? It doesn't mean that they automatically get the estate. It's not how it works. This is where ideally you would have already planned or prepped ahead of time to either transfer that equitable interest to the surviving individual, or if it goes into the estate, or if the children want to take you to court on a probate, well, yeah, it could get really freaking funky fast. So I would tell you, in a case like that, if you're moving in with somebody, estate planning is huge. I'm a firm believer of setting up trusts as well when you purchase properties, and have all that penned out and written up. Why don't people do this? Because again, it's a morbid conversation, and it's like, oh, do you think I'm going to die? You think I'm going to leave you? And but if you're really trying to be smart and do right by all parties, you have to have these tough conversations. You do. So that's why I'm doing this video, so hopefully you can. So should you have a written agreement? Yes, I strongly recommend that you have a written agreement with an attorney. If you are not married, you should have a written agreement that's done up by an attorney. It keeps things civil. I don't know if you have ever been in a relationship, or if you've ever had friends, or if you believe in human contact at all. If not, if you have a pasty face and you stay in the basement and you don't communicate with the world unless it's through text because you are afraid of other human beings. I don't know. Everybody's different, right? But if you're one of those people, well then, I'm probably not talking to you. But for the rest of us who have been in any friendship or relationship, there's tough moments. Being able to have a clear, guided set of a clear written out set of guidelines, an agreement, when those times get tough, because there's always going to be a funky time. Or here's the thing, two friends get together. I've seen this happen. I just dealt with this. Two buddies from college had bought a house together. Well, it turns out one of the guys met somebody, fell in love, decided that they were going to go a different direction. They were going to get married and start having children, and basically said, hey, I want out. And the other guy says, well, I don't. I love this house. He says, I don't care. That's where you would want something clearly written out, so you could work through those challenging times. Okay, so that's my recommendation. Definitely sit down with a lawyer, ideally a real estate attorney. And there's some great ones. They're super easy to find, especially with all the technology that we have now. But anyways, long story short, big takeaway. Yes, you absolutely can buy with somebody that you're not physically married to. There are some challenges that could come from that. So you need to really make sure you just ask the questions up front. Knowing the difference between actual, owning the property and the mortgage. They're two different animals. Who's going to be on the mortgage? Who's coming in with what in order to make it happen? Making sure that you get the vesting appropriate and right in title. And then making sure that you have some very clearly written out guidelines on what to do, how to do, when to do, and what ifs already written out just in case. That's all I got today. I hope this helped out a little bit. I'm trying to do one every day, just because a buddy of mine actually told me that he liked these videos better than I was doing a lot of AI videos, just so I can kind of get content information out. I don't have like a bazillion people following me on YouTube, but I have a lot of people that call me from all over the country because they watch these videos, or they find me in some way from watching these videos that answer the question that they're looking for. And I've just found that it makes me feel good. So I figured I'd just go ahead and start doing them every day on my own and just see what I can get through. But that's all I got. Appreciate you. If you have any videos that you want me to crank out, drop it down in the comments. And if you're watching this for the first time, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate it. Talk to you later.